ready.
Welcome to another episode of Buff in the Rough. Today we're going to talk to Davy Cornell about the differences between hunting in the thick briars of the Piedmont of South Carolina and the Christmas tree farms in the mountains of North Carolina and Tennessee. Help me welcome Davy Cornell to the program. Well, hey, Davy, how are you?
Doing well, Sam. How about you?
Oh, I can't complain. I really appreciate you taking the time out today to talk to us a little bit about beagles.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it. We enjoy listening to your podcast.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. Well, Davy,
it's nice to hear everybody else's opinion and kind of what they've got going on with their style dogs and how they do it.
I love that. I think, knowledge is power kind of a thing, and I think the more we can get out there, folks that have different opinions and different styles and what they like in their hounds, I think the more information we can share, the better for everybody.
I agree. Out of all the people I've met, it seems like there's no two people that are exactly the same. Mm-hmm. I've been fortunate enough to meet a lot of people doing this over the years and trying to pull a little bit from each person, even if it's, designing your kennels, figuring out what kind of dog you want to run or how your truck setup needs to be. Everybody's got their own little way of doing it.
I tell you, if everybody liked to think the same kinds of things, it would really be boring, don't you think?
It would.
Well, Davy, for folks that may not know you, would you mind to just kind of introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into beagles. You can talk about whatever you want to. It can be what you do in the beagle world. It can be what you do outside for fun. You just share whatever you'd like.
Sure. My name's David Cornell. I've lived in the mountains of North Carolina, right outside of the Boone area. Most people know it now for Appalachian State with their football programs and whatnot, but I'm fortunate enough to be a mountain boy there. I grew up with beagles my whole life. When I was younger, both of my grandfathers on each side had a pack of beagles, so no matter whose house I was at, I got to enjoy the dogs. And even being family, they both had their different style of dogs. One had a larger, faster dog that he would let run loose at his house at nighttime. The other grandfather had a small pack of 13-inch females that they gun hunted just through the season. They weren't as into it as we are and didn't run them year-round, but, after deer season was over with, they'd unsnap them, run them all winter, then put them back up. And they really enjoyed it, and I thought that was how beagling was until meeting a couple people and realizing you do trials and pleasure hunt and just do this year-round. But lived there my whole life, married, have two wonderful children, and just I've had the dogs off and on myself for probably 25 or 30 years now. And in the beginning, I strictly gun hunted, kind of the same way with my grandfathers, not paying as much attention to them throughout the year, and then just really running them hard through the winter months. And I used to work at Napa Auto Parts, so with my schedule there, I had to work most Saturdays. So a lot of my hunting took place on Sunday afternoons and Mondays and during the week. And I was actually fortunate enough to meet a man named Ronnie Brown in Napa. I was actually looking online for a female, and he walked around the counter and saw what I was looking at, and he said, "Hey, flip over this page and you'll see me." And sure enough, he was on the website I was looking at. He invited me to a UKC hunt that weekend. Of course, I had to work that Saturday, so I tagged along with him on Sunday. And, man, the first day going out to that hunt, I was hooked. We went to Doe Valley Sportsman's Club, met some great people, a completely different style dog than what I was running. I was running like a slower-moving black and tan beagle. Really stayed on the line, but just didn't really see the excitement in those that I did the field trial dogs. So after him introducing me to some people, I made some calls that week and actually sold my entire pack of black and tans and got up with a guy that used to be in UKC that's kind of retired from it now, named Ronnie Rourke. And I bought my first UKC trial dogs from him and never really turned back. So that's kind of how I got my start with it.
Well, that's a great start. That's a great story. So you right off the bat saw that there was a difference, and if you were going to be successful in the trials, you needed a little different kind of a dog. So how did that work for you? Did you settle in on a favorite bloodline or two? And what kind of traits do you believe you need to be competitive?
Well, starting out in the area that I was in, I knew Ronnie Brown through work and whatnot, and then got pretty close to Ronnie Rourke. And they highly influenced me on Branco Beagles. And to this day, Ronnie Brown still runs Branco bred Beagles. And that was kind of the direction that I went based on what they were running. Both of them were doing pretty well in the field trials. And where I didn't know a lot of people and didn't really know a lot of the bloodlines, I saw that was doing good, and I stuck with it. So I actually started kind of surfing the UKC forums that everybody used to look at online, and we're kind of seeing the different breedings. And I noticed a lot of the guys in Virginia were running Branco-style dogs and having success. So I thought, hey, there's something to it. And that's what was available to me. So that's kind of where I started. Over the years, I found some traits with those dogs that don't fit my style quite as well. So just like everybody else, trying to cross it up and tweak it a little bit here and there. But anybody that knows me knows that I have become really close friends with Toby Hyde from Line Shot Kennels. And we run together every chance that we possibly can. And we both like the same style dog. He has a much stronger breeding program than I do. So I let him make them and I run them. And if there's anything that I can contribute to him, if I've got a dog that he wants to breed to or puppies for me, we work together hand in hand. And where we run together day in and day out, having the same style dog, the same speed dog, it just works. And when you're out there running with your buddies, like we do every single weekend, it makes sense for them to, have the same drive, about the same speed. And if you get a good line that has brains, I feel like you can put anything else you want to it. It might take a little bit of time.
Right.
But getting one that knows how to run a rabbit, to me, is the hardest part, and then just try to adapt off of that.
Well, you said that you guys like the same kind of speed and drive and ability. Well, what is that? Is that fast, medium? And what kind of line control do you expect these dogs to have?
I want my dogs to run it just as fast as they possibly can without blowing up the track and looking stupid. And what I'm getting ready to say, everybody has their own opinion of the dogs. To me, the format hunting beagle is what I've ran the most, UKC hunting beagle.
Right.
It's called hunting beagle, but nowadays the type of dog that it takes to win those field trials, yes, we can take hunting dogs out there and compete. We've done it for years. I've been very blessed and fortunate to have some grand champions at my house, several champions. And, my dogs have done well under that format. But the dogs that I feel like are great field trial dogs are probably not my favorite gun hunting dogs, because in that particular format, everything seems to be focused on the speed and the drive. And where I live in Christmas trees and have for years, that's what used to win up there. You wanted something that was fast, that you could score lines with. But over time, as UKC rules have changed, I haven't trialed in probably 2 years now, but keeping up with it and reading up on the rules, the type of dog that seems to need to have a bigger nose to get on the clock, and now where you don't necessarily have to see the rabbit to plus your strike points and things like that, my style dog probably isn't going to do as well in the UKC trials as they did once upon a time, because I ran a little bit tighter dog that had to have a hot track so that I didn't take minus points and things. But just hearing it, I'm going to be a part of it this year. I've got a couple of young dogs coming on really strong that I feel comfortable with. But my thing that I started, as I said, I wasn't off on Saturdays. So when I went to a field trial, I'd either have to use a vacation day or go to some of the Sunday trials, which in fact had me away from my family. And with having 2 young children, it was always a constant battle trying to find time to field trial and run these hunts. So a lot of times I wouldn't show up unless I was toting a dog that I had really great confidence in getting there. And there's a lot of luck in it, and there's so many people that bring great dogs to these trials now. But years ago, when I felt like I was doing really well in them, I had a really nice polished dog that I would carry to the hunts, because I knew I didn't have a great shot at coming back next week. So I wanted to make my time at a field trial worth it. And if I don't have a really great dog that I've got a lot of confidence it's going to win his cast going back and forth, then I don't really go to the trials as much. I mean, the time you pay the entry fee and the gas and things, it's just you're paying to have a great time with your friends, but also having 2 kids, I have to pick and choose my battles on when I miss out on family time and when I go to field trials. So just trying to make a balance and make it work and keep it finances. That's kind of how I look at it. I'd love to do it more, but to me, if I can load up my truckload of dogs with my kids and our shotguns and go spend all day doing it, that's kind of where my heart is these days.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, talking about that, that's probably a good segue into a topic I wanted to bring up with you, because I know the importance of youth in our sport. We talk about this a lot, and I'll continue to try to talk about it and make sure it's out in front of everybody as much as I can. There's no sport tomorrow if we don't take care of the youth today. So I know this is really important to you, and you mentioned that you have younger kids now. Are they old enough to go with you? How does that work?
Yes, sir. My children, my daughter has went to the UKC trials with me when she was so small that we'd have to carry her up the hills, and now she is one of the safest gun hunters that I go in the woods with. And I'm pretty particular who I take my daughter with. So fortunately, I've got a great group of guys that we hunt with. Mm-hmm. But when she doesn't have something going on with school or with family, she's right there with me. And she's 14 years old. So to have a 14-year-old young lady in my life that loves to go do this, I'm beyond blessed. And she's kind of shy. So mm-hmm. when it comes to our group of hunters versus going to the field trials, meet new people, mm-hmm. she prefers our group gun hunting. I have a 9-year-old son who has a completely different personality, who is outgoing, and he's usually good for the first 2 or 3 hours hunting through the woods. He doesn't carry a gun yet. He just kind of stays with me, and we use 410s. So if we have a great opportunity for him to take a crack at one, then great. But he enjoys being out there, enjoys the people. But where I'm coming from today, down in South Carolina, the terrain, mm-hmm. it's a bit much for a 9-year-old. So again, just trying to pick and choose when he can come and when he has to stay at home.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, let's talk a little bit about the gun hunting then. So what does it take to be successful gun hunting? What kind of dog do you need to produce a rabbit in some of these tougher terrains? And I'm going to hit you up a little bit later about what it takes to keep a pack up where you live, kind of in the mountains, because I know that's probably not the friendliest place to live, especially, and we'll talk about this a little later, the weather's been just nuts this year. So,
the weather the past couple of weeks has been a handful.
Oh, it's crazy. It's really difficult to hunt. It really is. But what does it take to be successful in the field gun hunting? And maybe describe the perfect hunt as far as the kind of dogs you like to take, the number of hunters. Can you have too many hunters, too few hunters? How many dogs do you need to make a good racket? Can you just gun hunt with one dog? Do you need 15, 20? You tell me what the perfect hunt is according to Davy.
Well, years ago, we would take 4 or 5 dogs and think that we were having a great time. Mm-hmm. And we did. But now, where each hunter wants to bring a couple of their dogs and still have a great time with it, I think today we had maybe 12 on the ground. Mm-hmm. I don't like to get so many dogs that they're hard to keep up with, but if they pack up really well, the majority of the times when our group goes, we're running 12 to 16 dogs usually. If we have 4 guys that show up that are houndsmen and we bring 4 dogs apiece, it makes for a great day. And we generally, like, say for instance today in South Carolina, we have hunters that come in that are landowners and just great guys, part of the group, that don't have hounds, but they come in and they want to hunt with us and spread out and shoot the rabbits, and it makes for a great day. Mm-hmm. There's a gentleman that is not with us anymore. His name is Art. Most people know him from Mountain City. He used to always say that you've got to jump Mr. Rabbit before you can run Mr. Rabbit. And there's so much truth to that. You can have the fastest dog out there, one that will go through any terrain, but if you don't get the rabbit jumped, then you're obviously not going to run it. So I'm trying to have all my dogs be better jump dogs. People will say, they'll point out and say, there's my jump dog right there. Mm-hmm. And I've heard it growing up. They're like, well, do you have any jump dogs? Well, I pride myself when I take a like today, the 4 dogs that I took, each one of them jumped a rabbit at some point in the day. And I'm very fortunate to have that, but I solo my dogs quite a bit as well. So if I can't take a dog out that will jump its own rabbit, circle it, and bring it back, at least part of the time without any help, then it needs some work. And that goes back to the field trialing, because I used to solo my dogs all the time and run them by themselves so they didn't depend on any other dog to get it done. I wanted them to go out and do it themselves. So I feel like at any point a dog in my pack can go jump its own rabbit. And to me, that's really important, because if you don't jump him up, if they don't hunt hard and they don't know where to go hunt that rabbit, then you're just out there walking around in the bushes. And today watching, you can have a dog that's smart, that has the brains, that just seems to know where to hunt. You can look at a 6-year-old dog that's been hunted hard, and he's going to go in different places than that 18-month-old dog. The 18-month-old dog will hunt hard, but he just doesn't really know where to go look for the rabbit yet. And that is one of the greatest things about the program that Toby has right now. He is putting hunt in these dogs, and by the time they're 3 years old, they seem to have a really good head on them, and they know where to go hunt. And I can't say enough about what he's making. The majority of my dogs at my house right now, Line Shot Kennels, are responsible for him, because I found something that I like, and that's what I'm running. So being able to jump a rabbit, and something else that a lot of people overlook is handling. If we go out with a pack of dogs and they won't handle, it frustrates me to death. If you're trying to move places, or you've got a dog that goes deep that won't come back, and you've got people standing there waiting on you, and nowadays, every time you turn around, there's a road.
Right.
And having dogs that'll handle for their safety, that won't go near roads, and that will actually come back to you, that is one of our biggest pet peeves. You've got to have one that'll listen to you. Toby has sold and moved great hunting dogs because they won't handle as well as he likes them to. So for us in the terrain that we're in, they have to be able to handle and listen to us. No gun-shy dogs, no dogs that's going to take 30 minutes to catch, because it's just hard on the whole hunting group. But other than that, I mean, the thick stuff that we're running in, you can have a few dogs that come from one guy that are a little faster, a few dogs from another guy that are a little slower. In the terrain that we've been running mostly down in South Carolina, it is so thick that you can take 3 different speed dogs, and when they come through that brush, they're all at the same pace, because it just chokes them down so much.
Oh, yeah, Davey, the Briars are the great equalizer. They really are.
It has been. They've been rough on me today as well.
I bet so. Well, that sounds fantastic. I'd love to go with you guys sometime. But let me ask you this. So if you could draw up the perfect Beagle for you, what size would it be? What color would it be? Would it be male, female? How would it drive a track? What kind of control would it have? What kind of speed would it have? What is that? What's the perfect Beagle for Davy's pack?
I'm probably going to have some people that know me well laugh about this if they hear it, but it's funny that you asked this question, because just the past couple weeks it is changing at my house. In the past, based on the UKC background, and I keep saying UKC, we have ran several different formats in field trials, and I have always wanted a 15-inch male. If I can get it underneath the measuring stick at 15 inches and it's really fast and hunts hard, that's what I have wanted for a long time. I thought that drive, that speed, that's what I needed to really be able to compete in these trials, because having something that would get struck in, would score on the lines, and again, running in Christmas trees, that's what I wanted. You said in a little while we'll get into the kenneling. The kenneling has had a lot to do with it through these winter storms. Us going on road trips, transporting dogs to and from, seeing how dogs react to other dogs on the ground. I am trying to switch things up if I can make myself do it. And to me right now, a good 13 and a half, 14-inch female that hunts really hard, that's where my eyes are set right now. And it's hard because I have a kennel full of males. But as from here on out, as I keep puppies and looking for other dogs, I'm trying to focus more on females. Obviously, females come in heat. You have to put them up part of the gun season. We're dealing with that right now on a few of them. But in the dog box, after a 5-hour hunt, these males get grouchy. They're not ill towards one another, but you'll hear them kind of bristle up in the dog box. They don't want to touch each other. So we have to be careful how we transport them.
Yep.
We can throw 6 females in one side of the dog box, and they cuddle up on one another trying to stay warm.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, we've gotten 14 to 16 inches of snow where I'm from, and we've had wind chill factors below 0 about every night for the past week. So trying to kennel dogs up together, those 15-inch males don't like to live with a roommate. And again, those little females, they cuddle right up and go to sleep. So I'm starting to switch gears. Having been around a lot of these dogs, the females hunt just as hard. Some of Toby's females are hunting harder than my males. Mm-hmm. And they just seem to be easier. Their temperament. And again, where I'm not field trialing as much, I don't have to have one that's running the front of the pack trying to control everything because they run a little rougher. Mm-hmm. And that's what I wanted to begin with. But now trying to gun hunt and keep the track going, I want something that's a little more track-minded, easier to keep at the house, easier to transport. And I'm really liking the females that we're all running right now. So I'm trying to switch gears to that. So for me right now, upper medium speed, 13.5, 14-inch female. I'm not colorblind at all. I'm running some blue tick dogs right now that I really like that are Oak Hill crossed up with Branco stuff. Mm-hmm. I've got some tri-colored ones. I don't care about the color, but the size and their hunt, that's kind of what I'm looking for right now.
Perfect. I've always had people tell me if you ever got a good female, they'll change your life. And that
if you're going to be friends and running partners with Toby Hyde, you're preached about this little pack of females. And, man, watching them run day in and day out, I see it. Mm-hmm. Ronnie Brown has had some of the nicer females that I've ever ran with, and they stick out. Mm-hmm. I was telling you that I looked at the UKC forums and the chats. I noticed a lot of the dogs that were winning the big hunts, big 15-inch males, and I was like, hey, there's something to it. So that's kind of why I drifted in that direction to begin with. But now doing what we do, I overlooked a lot of females over the years that I probably should have kept around my house a little longer than I have.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Well, thank you for sharing that. So let me ask you this. So you've hunted a lot over the years. You grew up around Beagles. You've pleasure hunted. You've hunted in several different formats in the competition world and been successful in all of them. So what are some of the better dogs that you've ever hunted with? Dogs that really impressed you. You wanted some of that in your kennel, or maybe a different way of looking at it. What's a hound that you didn't really want to pull out with when you rolled up to the clubhouse because you knew you were going to have your hands full because you know they were that good? Are there any that stick out to you?
Yeah, and I'm probably going to sound biased because to me, figuring out what is a great hound, I want to watch it numerous times on the ground. Yeah, we go to a trial, and it's the UKC trialing world. It's a pretty tight-knit community. If you've got somebody running through the points, they're going to be toting the same dog in and out every week to put on some points. And you see those dogs run, and you get back to the clubhouse and you hear about them. Mm-hmm. The folks in High Point, Jeff Stacy, Kristen Bundy, they're always packing a nice hound. Kristen's flame dog, I haven't trialed near as much here lately, but I did get to run with that dog when she was younger. And then you hear about her placing in these big hunts and just being around her. That's a great dog. Mm-hmm. Ronnie Brown has a female that I have loved since, we started running together. And I think she finally made grand champion, but one of the reasons she didn't earlier is because he started pushing other dogs. Mm-hmm. But she came from Branco Crepan's kennels. Her name is Doe Branch Sadie. One of the just straight up dogs. And when you talk about hating to be called out, it seemed like I was running one of my favorite dogs ever named Cornell Sinbad, who has been my best dog that I've ever had in my kennel. And it seemed like when we were going through the champion stages to try to make them grand, Thomas or Ronnie was handling Sadie and I was handling Sinbad. And luck of the draw, we got drawn out together 4 or 5 hunts in a row. And I'm not talking about anybody else's dogs. We ran with some great dogs during that time frame.
Mm-hmm.
But when you come to the mountains in Tennessee and they have me as a guide or somebody like Ronnie as a guide, you have an advantage being a guide where you take your dog to the same running grounds day in and day out. And I had some running grounds in Tennessee that weren't far from my house, and I ran them all the time. I knew how the rabbits ran. I knew when I needed to take Sinbad to those grounds and when I needed to stay away from them, depending on how the scent conditions were.
Mm-hmm.
And when I would get locked in with that Sadie dog, it became a two-dog cast a lot because we pleasure hunted together, we field trialed together, and she was tough. And it's like she had my number. We battled back and forth. She'd get us sometimes, we'd get her, but it was always so close. And even if another dog came into the cast that could, potentially win the cast,
mm-hmm.
just watching those two dogs hunt, we looked at it as a battle. But those two dogs worked so well together day in and day out. They complemented each other. So looking back, I really loved hunting with her,
mm-hmm.
but I also knew that there was a really good chance I was going to get beat. But it's, again, where I run with the same guys all the time, I see they'll have a dog that really stands out. Like I said, I'm great friends with Toby. Toby had a female years ago who's passed and gone, who is probably my favorite dog ever, a little tricolored dog named Gracie. Just watching her hunt, she knew where to go, knew what brush piles to get in. She would jump more rabbits than anything we had on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
So when I would watch a dog consistently do this every time we came out, it's like she didn't have a bad day. To me, that's what makes a great dog,
mm-hmm.
because a lot of the field trial dogs, you hear about them doing well, and, there's a lot of luck in it, but they'll do well one weekend, maybe not so well the next weekend. But to have a little dog that's consistent every time you go out, that's what really stands out in my mind. Toby's Gracie dog was probably one of the better ones I've ever been in the woods with.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got another friend down in South Carolina named Eric Stout. He runs a lot of blue tick dogs. And to be able to have a dog, lots of his dogs, but to be able to have them go through those South Carolina Briars 5 and 6 days a week all through hunting season,
mm-hmm.
and still have something left at the end of the year, he's hard to beat. In his conditions, I'll pack a truckload of dogs down there, and they're dead when I come home. So there's several dogs at Eric's house that are great. We were lucky enough to do some other field trials, some little pack and progressive pack. There was some gentleman from Pennsylvania that came down, and I'm trying to think of, I think her name was Lola. I judged her a couple times, and I might have the name wrong, but it was, I think, Double Crow Kennels. And she was hard. I mean, she was a little pack dog, and she picked up every check. And, I'd heard about her before they brought her down here, but I got drawn out to judge her one time, and she won the cast by a landslide. And for knowing the other dogs on the ground where I had hunted with them day in and day out, to have this other dog come in and just, wipe the floor with them,
mm-hmm.
it was impressive, because putting her against the things that I had watched and known, she dominated. 2 weeks later, she came back, she dominated again.
Mm-hmm.
So dogs like that really stand out in my mind. And I know I'm skipping over some great ones, because field trialing, you see so many wonderful dogs. I've traveled to Ohio and different states, and people will get on a hot streak with a dog in the trials, and they'll do great and win everything. I mean, Jeff Stacy, he always shows up with a great dog. Alan, he comes with a great dog. I've hunted with some of your dogs that were wonderful. Everybody has that dog that they'll bring that they're confident in, and it does really well. But I didn't get to see as many of the field trial dogs compete day in and day out as I have a lot of the local ones.
Mm-hmm.
And knowing that these local dogs kind of get overlooked because they're not on a huge platform. So I think some of the better dogs that I'm familiar with are right here in my backyard, with the guys that I run with.
It's interesting you say that, and I think that's a fantastic point to make. My background has been mostly in coon hunting and coon hounds. I grew up coon hunting for a long time, and traveled around, got to hunt with some fantastic hounds all over the country. And I may have mentioned this on a podcast a couple of podcasts ago, but the very best coon hound I ever hunted with had never been in a trial. I mean, a night hunt.
Yeah, and
So no one's going to ever know about that hound, and he was one of the best I'd ever hunted with.
I think it's if the dog satisfies the man that's feeding him at the end of the day, then job well done.
Mm-hmm.
If you have dogs at your house that you're happy with that are doing what you like to do that fits your style, I'm sure when I get back into the field trials and see some of the people that I used to love running with, I'll probably get the itch and I'll start doing it again because it was great people to be around. You know, starting out, I would hear these stories from people about, you know, things going wrong in field trials. But this happened. Most of my stories through field trials were great. I've had people try to manipulate so that my dog would win the cast, and you know, you don't have that quite as often. But it's happened to me on several occasions. You know, it's like, well, I've already got this win. You need to win. You know, come on, let's do this. You know, I'm not mentioning names, but I've had lots of people that were willing to sacrifice their place if you were having a hard time putting a placement on your dog. So I had some really great times field trialing. There was an instance that stood out in my mind with a gentleman who's also passed, Jeff Stacy's father, Coy Stacy. I was running with Mr. Coy when I was running my Sinbad dog. The dogs were in the brush, and they put a scorecard in my hand for some reason. And, I mean, I had great people out there on the cast that were better fit to score than me. Well, I thought I heard my dog bark. And looking back now, I'm pretty sure I did. But I questioned myself, and I was talking to Mr. Coy there, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure that was him. There was a brush pile in front of us. And he kind of had that little smile. Well, then his dog barked, and he struck. And my dog was in there, and he said, yeah, if that was yours. And I couldn't really tell by the way he was acting if he was being overly friendly because I was new in it or if he was kind of giving me that grin like, you just messed up, young man. But at the end of the day, it stayed on the scorecard, and I kept the first strike, and I won the cast. So I never felt as great about that hunt because, one, either Mr. Coy knew in his heart that I messed up and he let me by with it, or I messed up unintentionally, or I was right. But either way, it wasn't cut and dry. So I guess kind of a karma thing. When I called in on that dog when I had 5 win slips on him, UKC told me they only had 4 on record. And it wasn't even for that particular hunt. That was a world qualifier. So the next weekend I had to go to Creston, and lo and behold, I won with him again. So it was kind of a karma thing on my deal. I granted the dog out with 6 win slips where it really only took 5. But it made me feel a lot better about it in the long run because either Mr. Coy was being really nice to me, but I never got that out of my head. Like if it was a legit thing or if he just let me slide with one instead of making me eat some points there. But he was always great with me out in the field. We had a good time cutting up. I drew out with him in Ohio here, and we cut up and had a great time. So that one, it was fun, but it always kind of bothered me because I didn't know if it was a pushover deal or if I actually earned it. But in the long run, I had to get 6 wins on him anyway. So I guess the dog earned it one way or another.
That's a good story. I tell you, we talked a little bit earlier about the importance of passing on the sport to the youngsters and talking about some of the guys that you mentioned already with Coy Stacy and Art Fenner, and I throw in Woody Crowder and James Jarrett are 4 guys that I think were I don't know if I'd say household names with folks in the area, but you show up to those clubs and those guys were usually doing something. Whether they were volunteering, they were in the kitchen, they were running things, they were taking part in the raffles, they were guiding, they were judging, and we lost all 4 of those guys, and in like a really kind of short time frame, maybe a 2 to 3 year time frame. It's hard to recover when you lose some of those old timers like that, and so
it's really hard, and the clubs have a hard time because everybody tries to pitch in, but Woody Crowder lived for UKC. He running with that man and being a neighbor to him. You know, we had our ups and downs over the years, but for one thing or another, all retaining to hunting. But he'd give you the shirt off of his back, and if you mentioned UKC and Woody Crowder, anybody in the sport knew who he was. He traveled around so much, and he had such an impact on the local clubs where we live. the sport will definitely, in the community, will miss Woody. He cared so much about the door prizes at that club, because if people were going to drive a long way to Doe Valley, he wanted to give them something to win in a raffle, dog food, rabbit traps, always something. So he was very involved, and I learned a lot from Mr. Art. Like I was saying before, he would always talk about how people want the fastest dog, got to have a fast dog. He would say, if they can't jump Mr. Rabbit, they can't run Mr. Rabbit. And there's so much truth to it. It doesn't matter how fast he is. If he doesn't get the rabbit going, you don't have nothing at the end of the day.
Art was a hoot. He really was. He was a lot of fun to hunt with.
I was lucky enough to go run with these guys, not in a UKC setting, and Art was slick. He the guys in Doe Valley, they didn't necessarily want everybody to gun hunt the Christmas tree farms in Tennessee. And I've gun hunted those farms since I was much younger. I know the owner really well. I mean, we talk on the phone, eat dinner together. He's a good friend of mine. But before social media came about, I was murdering rabbits in the Christmas tree farms in Mountain City and North Carolina. That's what we did with our gun dogs, I mean, for years and years. Well, then, everybody wants to show the tailgate pictures, and that's fine. It's promote the dogs. You've had a great day with friends. Well, then not everybody likes it when you kill a tailgate full of rabbits, because they also like to field trial a lot of the spots that we were hunting. Well, before social media, I was killing way more rabbits then than I did when I started field trialing, but nobody knew about it. And, being a local to these Christmas tree farms, they hold rabbits for so many years, but that man's going to come in and cut those trees in about 6 to 7 years, because that's how he generates his living. So you better get it while the getting is good, because anybody that's around now will say the running in Doe Valley and Creston, it's not quite what it was years ago. And yes, the rules have changed some, but you don't hear or see the 1,200 point scores that you did years ago. And it's not necessarily because we've killed all the rabbits. I mean, we have been blamed for it, in the past, but it's because their habitat changes. And being that I've hunted these trees so long, it's not just like a grown-up briery field where they'll be there next year. Once the cover's gone, as many hawks and owls and coyotes as we have in the area, when they cut those Christmas trees on the farms, it's done. You might hit some push-up piles around the outside, but a 3-foot Christmas tree is not going to hold the rabbits like those farms did back in their heyday. And so it's going to take a few years for them to bounce back. And that's one of the reasons we hunt different terrain now. I don't hunt the Christmas trees as much because they haven't grown back in. The farms that I really enjoyed hunting, they haven't grown back in enough for us to go spend 3 and 4 hours hunting them. So my biggest thing, we were talking about the youth, our sport, it scares me more that we're going to lose the sport with the lack of hunting grounds, because people coming into the areas, buying up the large tracts of property, making developments. I think that the youth are still going to want to be interested, but the older generations like you and I, we're going to run out of hunting spots before we run out of interest. And where I live in, the mountains of North Carolina, Boone is a tourist town. And as the older farmers pass on, their family members end up with the farm. They start getting the tax bills. Then they see dollar signs. The next thing you know, there's a development with 10 houses in it where I used to rabbit hunt for 5 and 6 hours at a time. So the lack of spots is going to really take a toll on my hunting in the next few years. It already has, and it's a nightmare, but I see it coming.
I'm curious about this. I don't know what direction we're headed in, but I have the same kinds of concerns. Just real quick, I went to visit my dad today, and when I turned down the road that he lives on, they've already put in like a 500 house development in there, and then on one side of the road. And so I'm headed down to his house, and I noticed a lot of movement going on the right side of the road. So when I get to the house, I'm like, Dad, are you getting some more neighbors down here? And oh yeah, son, they're putting in another like 400 or 500 houses in there. And I'm just thinking, my goodness, because you're right. That's a loss of hunting ground that folks have enjoyed in that area for years. but it's also traffic and other dangers to your hounds with a lot of traffic on the roads that you didn't have to worry about before. Yeah, definitely a concern. I want to be optimistic because I do know of a lot of good youngsters in the sport right now, but I am concerned about access to hunting land. I totally agree.
Well, within the past 10 years, I would host hunts for my buddies every weekend. We would go. I'm blessed to have a lot of family land in the area that I live. Growing up cow pastures, cutovers, and then knowing a lot of the Christmas tree growers, being able to go hunt in their farms. So whether we're pleasure hunting or gun hunting, for years I've been able to provide that. Mm-hmm. As I'm talking to you, I have driven 3 hours to South Carolina to run my hounds today, and I'm on my way 3 hours back home. Mm-hmm. And the tracts of land that we're hunting in South Carolina remind me of my house 10 and 12 years ago. The people are still friendly. They'll slow down their car if a beagle gets near the road. They'll pull over, listen to the dogs. You can go up and ask somebody, hey, we noticed this would hold rabbits. Can we hunt here? And these guys have tons of hunting because everybody's still friendly. They still enjoy the hunting. Mm-hmm. I can turn a pack of dogs loose on property that my family owns or I have written permission to hunt, but yet there's a development at the end of the street now, and they'll call the law and say that there's dogs barking. And the next thing you know, I have a couple county officers. Even though I'm not breaking any laws, it gets to the point where the hassle of trying to find a large enough tract of land to run the dogs without disturbing the peace and getting the newcomers upset or mad, it's easier to drive 3 hours and run with my buddies than it is to fight the crowds in the town that I've grown up running in. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I wonder what the future is going to hold. I'm not entirely sure. I do know that in some of the other registries, they hunt in enclosures, and some of those enclosures, fenced-in enclosures, are really big. And I wonder if at some point hunting's going to look more like belonging to a hunting club that has a big enclosure where you go turn your dogs loose and you're on some kind of lottery system where I get a couple hours of run time this week and we have our field trials and everybody's invited. I wonder if that's kind of where we're headed. Larger hunt clubs, fewer diversity-wise, fewer places to hunt.
Unfortunately, I kind of see it go in that direction. In a lot of places we're still lucky. I was saying down in South Carolina, and driving through some of the places down around High Point, those guys, they have larger tracts of land on some older roads. So I think there's still spots out there, but depending on where you're at and the population and how desirable it is for people to come to, that's one of the things that's so hard where I'm at. It used to be a small mountain town that was barely on the map. Mm-hmm. And then a thriving university with a great football program and, some snow skiing and different things to attract some college students. Next thing you know, it's not a small mountain town anymore. Mm-hmm. You don't even want to go to the small mountain town because for the locals, it's so hard to deal with. And you hear it in so many different areas. But I'm really seeing a lot at my house, and it hurts because we're not that old. No. You hear your grandfathers and things talking about it, and you're like, man, that must have been terrible. Mm-hmm. But I don't feel like I'm that old yet, and I'm seeing it. So that bothers me with the youth, that they're not going to have a place to go enjoy things that folks like you and I have been able to take advantage of our whole lives and not thought twice about it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, David, let me ask you this, and we may have hit some of it already, but I did want to ask you, because you live in kind of a unique part of the country, at least down where we live, higher elevation, I'm guessing around 4,000 feet maybe are some of the mountains that you guys have in the Boone, Blowing Rock area, kind of in that general area. But what does it take to keep a pack going in that kind of environment? You mentioned hunting Christmas trees. It's very different, and I'm, 45 minutes away-ish, kind of down in the foothills, and where I hunt looks very different than compared to what you guys hunt. I remember the first time I brought my hounds up and hunted in Christmas trees, I felt like they just looked at me like, where do you want me to go? Where are the briars? So what does it look like up there, and what does it take to keep a pack going, given the challenges you have weather-wise and terrain-wise?
Well, the elevation is different. I don't know so much that the air is that much different as far as like their breathing, but the conditioning, getting them on those hills. I know when the Doe Valley Club was able to host some of the larger hunts, the Eliminators, the World Hunts a few times, people would come a few days in advance to try to get their dogs ready in that environment. And the terrain, the steep hills with the Christmas trees, you really have to have a dog that's in shape, because it's up the mountain to turn around and come right back down the mountain, to turn around and go back up the mountain. And when there aren't any briars in the middle of these Christmas trees, they're running full blast to the bottom. Then the rabbit turns and goes back to the top. So I had a couple places that I like to go hunt just to condition my dogs. And, the people called it the hillside in Mountain City, and a lot of cast members wouldn't want to go to the hillside. But that was one of my spots. I love taking a cast there because I ran there 2 and 3 times a week. I knew that my dog could get to the top of the hill, but I looked at it like an athlete. A football player is not going to train the same way as a basketball player. So I think keeping the dogs in that terrain, as I'm driving further south and it's flat, but it's so congested and covered up with these crazy red briars, my dogs are built for speed, but they didn't have the longevity to hunt down here for 4, 5, 6 hours in these briars and just keep pecking at it and going at it. So, over time I'm starting to hunt a little different terrain at home. But the Christmas trees, man, it was a different animal, and I think it just took repetition to get them used to it. So, the dogs are smart. We talked about the dogs having brains. Having a dog that kind of knew when to conserve its energy, things like that, you can't teach them. They have to know it. And the hillside, I took a couple casts there for the World, and then Toby handled my dogs at the World. They learned the terrain, and I used it as an advantage being a judge. But the hills definitely make a difference. You can tell when a dog's out of shape really quick. When people come up to visit that don't have the dogs that are used to these hills in the mountains, about an hour in, they'll be lagging at the back of the pack. And they're great dogs, but after about an hour you can really see what kind of stamina a dog has. And if I were to purchase a dog from somebody else and just throw it in with my pack, it might absolutely blister him in the briars. But generally speaking, it's going to take it a couple of months to get used to the mountains. And I just blame it on the terrain. And right now with the snow and the frozen ground, I've had a lot of trouble with the dogs' pads getting cut up in the past, trying to run them in that just harsh winter where it would freeze up at nighttime, try to thaw out in the morning. And I don't push them as much in this kind of weather. I wait till it melts off. Like I said, I'm fortunate enough to have other places off the mountain to go. So I go look for better weather instead of killing my dogs in the snow, because it's rough on them. And the people that have harehounds that can run rabbits in that kind of snow with their noses, more power to them. But my pack of dogs will look stupid in 2 or 3 inches of snow. I can count on one hand the number of great snow day runnings that I've had in the mountains. The scent is terrible. The icy conditions aren't great. So over the years, I've learned when it gets that bad, we call in a sick day, try to find somewhere else to go and head off the mountains, or wait till it clears up. And as far as the feed and things, I think most of the guys all around, they pick out a food that's great, that they've heard about or tried and used. One thing in my area, we don't have great food supply stores. We have the general Tractor Supplies and things like that. But I actually have a local convenience store that orders the type of dog food that I like. That's a locally owned farm shop, and he'll be nice enough to get me what I need. So most of the guys up here, we're probably feeding the same thing just because that's what's available. But we try to feed, a 20% protein, 20% fat. They're around a little bit. Each dog might be a little different, but where it's so cold and brutal right now, I have stepped it up and I'm feeding my dogs twice a day. Lower amounts in the morning and lower amounts in the evening versus just feeding them in the evening. I take a 5-gallon bucket of the hottest water I can get and mix their food with it, just so they'll have some water and some hydration in their system, because the water bowls are frozen within a matter of an hour and a half. At 6-8 degree weather, the water bowls get toast. So the houses that I use up in the mountains, some people might think they're overkill, but right now I've switched to above ground kennels, which I'm learning to appreciate. I've never been a fan in the past. I've always liked the on ground chain link. My original setup, each kennel was 5 foot wide, 10 foot long. I use the plastic barrel dog houses just because I feel like I can keep them cleaner with hose and bleach, and I don't have to worry about the wood rotting. But with some females and some puppies and things now, and just cleaning up, I was influenced by some people to try some above ground kennels. I've tried them. So far, I like them. I think the dogs are staying warmer in the wintertime. I've bought some of the heated floor beds from Rural King and Tractor Supply. I put those in there, put some hay on top of them. This past week, where it was so cold, I actually went and bought a carpet roll and cut out some carpet doors. The older dogs have done really well with it. The puppies used them as chew toys. So things like that. Just trying to keep the wind off of them the best I can up here. My kennels are boxed in. The sides and the back are all metal with a metal roof, and then I have above ground kennels inside of that. And when it gets really windy, I take some industrial tarps and drape them down in the front. So it's basically a 360 degree enclosure during the night, and in the mornings I'll roll up the tarps so they get some sunlight and some fresh air. But just trying to keep them out of the wind where it's that cold. And again, like with the conditioning on the hills, I think the dogs get used to it. I brought all my Beagles in my basement, and I have a wood stove in my basement, and tried to keep everything warm. And in fact, my dogs were more uncomfortable in the basement where it was too warm than they were outside. Like, I opened the door and they all went running out. They'd rather be outside in those temperatures than in a 72 degree basement. So I think it's what they're used to. And, I can't change the weather. I just try to make their houses as comfortable and the best I can, so that I feel somewhat good about it going to bed at night, knowing that there's 12 hounds outside sleeping in their kennels in 8 degree weather.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I think folks will find that interesting. It's interesting to hear some of the strategies you've had for offsetting the super cold and crazy wind that we've been having here lately. But I want to give a shout out as we get ready to wrap up. My education in the mountains up there of North Carolina and Tennessee, early on when I first started field trialing, the dog that I hated to draw. I know you know John Cornett, right?
Yes, sir.
You know John? Well, he had this dang dog called Psycho Mountain Dan, and I couldn't beat him. It didn't matter. I could go anywhere and do okay, but when I went up there, it seemed like I always drew him, no matter what. Didn't matter what I was hunting. Didn't matter if it's Saturday, Sunday, 1-day hunt, 2-day hunt. Doesn't matter. I'd draw that Dan dog, and he just knew where the rabbits were, man. He just would find one when nobody else could, or he would score a line when no one else could. He was just the perfect mountain dog. I don't know if how he did in other parts of the country or not, but up there, I found him just really tough to beat. He's a little blue tick dog, just a super little dog for the mountains. But he quickly taught me what it took to win up there. He showed it to me.
Yeah, that dog climbed the ladder pretty quick. I remember he was a registered dog, and I was running a dog named Sinbad in Champions. And John and I, we've known each other for years. We used to coon hunt together, and I had a great relationship with John. We went out on casts. Another thing I appreciate about John would bring a dog that he could put on the bench and show, and he was just as hard to beat on the show as he was out in the field. And I've been out of the field trials for a little while, so I don't know what kind of dog he's packing now. But as a bench show judge, I picked John's dog a lot. Yeah. I mean, going by what I thought the UKC rules were, he always came for some hardware, whether it was on the bench or in the field. And he made the comment one time, and we were just picking and joking. We were outside, and he said, I'm gonna get some of that Sinbad dog, And I just grinned. I was like, well, when you make champion, come on and get some. It didn't seem like it was a few weeks, and he was champion. He was right there. That dog did well, and I think that the gentleman we talked about, Art was really fond of that dog, and I think that in the end, he and John ended up being partners on that dog, where Art would travel around quite a bit more with Woody to try to get that dog out there a little bit more. But yeah, and you always feel like you're leaving somebody out, because just while we've been talking, I've been racking my brain about all the great dogs. And being able to travel and do this in several different states, going to Ohio, you meet some people up there that run a different style dog that are good. Brian Mead, those guys up there are winning week in and week out. There's great dogs across the country, and I'm sure as soon as we end this call, I'll be like, well, man, I forgot about that one. So no disrespect to the dog or the person that owns it. I've been fortunate enough to run with so many great people and see so many hounds. It's hard to keep track of them. And then you start thinking about a dog, and next thing you know, that dog's 14, 15 years old. It's already passed, and they're gone so quickly. We were going through our dogs last week, and it's like, yeah, we'll run this one here and there, and then you see them kind of start lagging behind the pack, and you're like, well, I wonder what's going on with them. But then you look at their papers, and they're 8 years old, and you don't even realize it. And it's like, wow, I can't run him 4 days this week. I need to let him rest a little bit. And I don't know if that happens to everybody as much as it's happened to me, but, man, it has crept up on me. Some of my favorite dogs, they're getting to the point where they're aging out on me.
Davey, I swear, my favorite hounds, a lot of them are the old dogs. And I think a lot of times people get in there and they're just really wanting to make a name for their dog, and they get in there and they're aggressive and they get them titled, and then it's kind of like, yeah, what do I do now? I have a soft spot for these old guys, and I still hunt my original old Cole dog that I've had for a long time, and he'll be 13 here in a couple months. And
I remember that dog.
Yeah, that was my first trial dog, and I got him from, you talked about Coy Stacy, but I got him from Coy and Jeff, and that was my first dog, and he taught me how to hunt in these things. This is a sidebar true story. Back then, the rules were a little different, and you had to have a winner's pack win, but you also had to have 100 points. And I was such a poor handler that I had over 200 points with that dog, and just had a heck of a time getting him finished. And finally got him finished. But he's just such a fun dog to hunt. I still hunt him with my young hounds. You're spot on. He's as good 45 minutes as any dog I own. And then he just starts, bless his heart, he starts to fade after that. But then I remember, if you do the 7 years of dog life to human life, he's going to be 90-something years old here pretty soon. It's okay for him to slow down a little bit, But it's a good reminder. I just love those old dogs.
Well, we were having a conversation last week or the week before, and a guy told me, he said, I don't understand. I'm not on Facebook or social media. It's not my thing, so I missed out on a lot of the good, but I'm fortunate enough I also missed out on a lot of the drama and a lot of the bad.
Yeah.
But the guy brought to my attention, he said, it burns me up. You'll see people on Facebook either trying to sell or give away these old dogs, labeling them as a great puppy starter, knowing good and well that dog has given them 4, 5, 6 years of great running.
Yeah. And
then when it gets to that point, they're just ready to dump it off on somebody else, so they're not feeding it, not dealing with it.
Yeah.
This same guy that told me that has a line of his old dogs at his house, because his wife was standing there as well. And she said after they're 2 or 3 years old, she said they're not leaving here, because he doesn't sell as many dogs. But once they've given their heart and soul to him and been out there running through those briars, they're like family, and he keeps them till the absolute bitter end. His dog food bill is astronomical, but he keeps those old dogs because in his mind, in his eyes, that's their best home. He knows the dog. He knows how they eat. He knows everything about them. And instead of just giving them or passing along to somebody else, they stay there till the end. And after having that conversation, I've tried to do that in the past. I've also let go of some of those old ones. But now we'll have an old dog hunt where we might go somewhere for an hour, but we'll take the dogs that are gray in the muzzle And it's like just reminiscing on the old times when we were field trialing them and having a ball and gun hunting them when they were 2 years old. And it's more about the stories at that point. But we still try to make room for those old dogs. And Toby Hyde is the one I'm talking about, man. You probably get sick of hearing me say his name, but he has got a kennel full of dogs that are 7, 8, 9, 10 years old that will never go anywhere because they have given it to him. And out of respect, he's taking care of them for the rest of their days.
I'll tell you, I love that story. I love the idea of an old dog hunt. I just absolutely love it. My old cold dog, he'll push up the daisies here. He's been fantastic for me. But I'll tell you another thing about these old dogs and this weather we've had lately, Davey. I've got 2 females out there that I think are pretty good young dogs, and they're getting to be kind of in their prime, maybe 3, 4 years old. And they're not bad. They can jump and run rabbits and do pretty well in competition. But with these conditions being how they are, that old dog, I can't tell you how many times over the past couple of weeks he's picked up a lot of checks on those young girls and made them look silly a couple times because he just has all that experience that they don't have.
Well, running the trials, back when I was doing it much more, I would get a dog just barely started, and I thought it was time. It was ready. Yeah. And I would start putting him in the hunts, $20 here, $15 there, and I'd keep him in it. And I got lucky a few times. Fortunately, I had a dog that started out at 7 months old that was doing well and placing, finished first at the High Point hunt on the state hunt on the first day.
Wow.
At 7 months old. And I was like, wow, this is crazy. But it was hit or miss. One day he would do great and lead the pack. The next day, just terrible. So as time has went on, and because of, just the financial side of it and everything, as time goes on, I'm a little choosier what kind of dog I do put in the hunt, because if I'm only able to go to a few, why not take that 3-year-old dog that's already got all that puppy love behind him?
Oh, yeah.
And, he's starting to get the brains to really run, and I won't get so frustrated. He'll do a little bit better. So, I'm not – when I do go back to trialing, I'm not running a really young dog like I used to. I'm sticking to those older ones because you get drawn out in a 4-pack. A lot of times those younger ones, they'll go jump a rabbit. They've got so much drive. But then you look at who picks up the checks and who keeps it going. It's that dog with a little more experience, like you were saying. He just kind of makes them look silly from time to time.
I love watching it too. It tickles me.
Well, we love it, watching the old dogs make the young dogs look stupid.
Yeah.
We laugh about it, knowing that that's the future of our kennels. But you have so much pride in those old ones when they have a little bit left and they do something great like that. You'll talk about that for an hour going home, not what the 6-month-old did.
That's so true. Well, Davey, we're going to wrap up with this. Is there anything that I should have asked you about that I didn't ask you about? Is there anything else that we need to cover?
Man, not that I know of. I just, there's so many different people running their Beagles for different ways, whether they're gun hunting, whether they're trialing, whether they're chasing points. The fact is, we're all houndsmen. If you're in it for the love of the dogs, then to me, that's what matters. I've met so many great individuals over the years doing so many different styles of it. We can run field trials and have a great time and enjoy the camaraderie, and then go out in the field with our shotguns and do the same thing. I don't like it when I hear gun hunting people talking about how, field trialing is just stupid and it's all about the points and all about the titles. And then I'm not crazy about it when I hear the field trialers talk about, well, that gun hunter shouldn't shoot all his rabbits because then he's not going to have any rabbits to run. We're all out here as houndsmen doing what we enjoy doing. That's what it's about to me. I want everybody to have a great time and enjoy it, because you never know when we won't be able to do it again. Either our old dogs are going to get too old and they're going to be pushing up the daisies, or there's going to be a development brought in, or, God forbid you take a turn for the worse with your health. I mean, You just never know what next season is going to be. So get out there and enjoy it. No matter how you enjoy the hounds, go enjoy it. That's what it's about.
Well, Davey, that was well said, and that's where we'll wrap this up. But I really do thank you for spending some time with us and sharing a lot of information, a lot of opinions, a lot of history about yourself and your hounds. I sure do appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to Buff in the Rough, and remember to like and subscribe if you want to be notified when we have new content available. And please send comments and suggestions to buffintherough@gmail.com.